The gold camo in Call of Duty. It goes all the way back to COD 4, the original Modern Warfare, and it's only available to the most dedicated players. So when I set out to make a gold camo in real life, I had to choose a historic combo. And in today's video, we're going to be doing just that. 3D printing and hand painting the MP5 in gold camo from Modern Warfare 2019. We start our journey inside the computer where we have to cut up the model into 3 pieces so it fits on our printer. Then we wait for a very long time and we just think about what projects we want to do next. Comment below what you guys would make first if you could make any weapon in Call of Duty history. After the long 100 hours of printing, this is where the most important steps start. I used to just spray paint on the ground on some cardboard and it did the trick, but it really wasn't the most professional thing in the world. So I got a couple of small upgrades that should hold me over until we can really build out a cool space. I'm now using a portable spray booth, which has a space for a standard box fan and then also an air filter that you would find in your house. It's a pretty janky setup, but it does do the trick good enough for the time being. The fan and filter helps by pulling out some of that overspray so it doesn't get back onto what you're painting and give you some weird little things. It just helps out. The other item in this is a little dolly that spins around, and I absolutely love this thing, which you can see in this clip. This makes it so I don't have to do multiple sessions of front and back and front and back. I can just put it standing up and then spin it around as I'm painting. It's a great little feature. Now that we're in it, this is going to be our biggest test of patience here. Sanding and priming and sanding and priming. It's a long process, but in the end, it helps get rid of a lot of those layer lines that you get from 3D printing, which I'm still learning. I'm still very new to 3D printing and all of this stuff. So I'm learning the best ways. I have a few more options that I'm going to be trying in the future. So stick around, sub to the channel if you want to see me learn the best ways. But in this video, I did do the automotive primer, which has a filler and a primer. And then I sand that down and repeat. And when I'm sanding, I build up from, I believe, 80 or 120 grit. And then I build that all the way up to like an 800 grit. So you're going to go with like 4 or 5 different types of sandpaper. And that is just going to help give you a really smooth surface. And when I'm spraying this piece, I'm trying to be as mindful as possible to not put it on too thick or introduce any types of drips, because yes, we are going to be sanding, but we don't want to introduce any extra work. We're already in it for the long haul with this one. After we're satisfied with the surface, and I was pretty good, I think we could have spent a little bit more time and gotten rid of some lines, but you'll see in the end, it looks great. And we're going to be doing some weathering to this, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Next up is spraying on the gold base coat. And again, the same rule applies here. We want to have lots of thin coats. So you just want to build up those layers and get a nice even coat over the whole thing. We don't necessarily know exactly what's going to be covered up in the future or not. So it's best to just get everything nice and even. When that's done, it's time to bring it inside to my setup, and this is where we get into the details. Like I said before, not every inch of this weapon is going to be covered in gold. So we go in and we start by painting the parts that are not going to be gold with black. And this is just my standard black that I put on everything, and we give it a couple of coats, let that dry, and then we need to think about what the pattern is going to look like. So I sketch out the pattern with pencil. This is great because we can just erase it if we make a mistake, but it's very nice when we're eventually going to paint to have some sort of guide to go by and not just play it by ear the whole time, because you can get some nice even areas and stuff like that. Having it sketched out really helps out speed up the process. Plus, this topographic pattern is why this Modern Warfare gold is one of my favorite golds that they've ever done in a Call of Duty game. I think it's really cool. I think it's a really cool effect. Would I like all of the weapons to be fully gold? Maybe, but the black accents, they do look pretty good. And you'll see in this model, I really like how it turns out on the black specifically, because we do go over the black with a gold pattern. And I think that looks really cool. And that's what we're doing right now. So we're going over the black, and we do this in a 2-stage process. We first go over with a non-metallic gold yellow, tan. I go back and forth, whichever one is really like laying down the smoothest, so I don't have to do multiple coats. That's generally the one I go with. And the reason I do this is the metallic paint sucks. It's terrible. They all suck. They don't have a lot of pigment in them because they're focused on being metallic. So then when you have that base coat of yellow or tan, that kind of shines through the metallic and it just gives you a nice base, and you don't have to worry about having tons and tons of coats of metallic to make it just a bulletproof metallic area. Next up is the pattern on the actual gold part, because there is a pattern, and in real life this is probably like an indent or, you know, some sort of texture. So we have to do something that mimics that, and what I chose for this was using a brown. And it's not a super dark brown, it's not like a super like thick brown, it's just a dark-ish brown, but it still allows some of the metallic to shine through, and it just gives that effect that it is indented a little bit, and you can kind of see it, and I think it's a really nice detail. So we go over this. This is probably one of the longer processes of painting for this specific piece, just because I really wanted it to look good, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I think the brown was a good choice. Now, once we've kind of gotten to a point where we feel that that looks really good, the next thing we want to do is add some weathering. We're going to be doing this by dry brushing, and unfortunately I lost all the footage of me actually dry brushing on this piece, so I'm going to throw up some dry brushing that I've done on an earlier piece just to kind of show you what I'm doing, and I'm still going to talk you through what I'm doing. We're still using the same paints, which is browns, grays, and then on the MP5 I used a little bit of gold as well, just to kind of add some of that gold back into the non-gold parts. But what we do is we put a little bit of paint on the brush, and then we kind of wipe that off on a piece of paper or a paper towel, so there's just a little bit of the paint left, and then you're just going to lightly brush that on the surface. You want to really focus on like edges here. This helps bring out a lot of those details. And then I also go on the surface a little bit and just add in some like little scratch marks, just some like, you know, little weathering here and there, and it makes it kind of look like battle torn or battle worn. And I think it really just adds a lived in aspect to the piece, and at the end of the day I think it looks really, really good. So once we're done with that, the next thing that we do is we need to seal the piece, and we do that with a varnish. In this case I'm using a matte varnish. Sometimes I go with gloss, sometimes I go with matte. It really depends on what colors we're using and like what the feel of the piece is. Like this, we're going for like that battle torn, that type of thing. And for me, from my experience, the metallics kind of shine through the matte a little bit nicer. It's not great either way. The metallic kind of like loses a little bit of its shine, but in this case it's okay because it is that battle torn, and it is still plenty metallic. We're not like totally going away from that. Now, once every piece is sealed separately, then we need to assemble. In the file, we add these little white dowels. They're 3D printed pieces that just kind of go inside. It gives it a little bit of strength, and it helps us line up the pieces. So you just throw some super glue on that, stick it in on one side, and then you connect the pieces, and then you just gotta hold it together till that glue dries. And it's super easy. It's a great way to work in multiple pieces and not having to have the whole piece together as you're painting, because that gets, especially with some of the size, like if I were to have to do that Car 98 back there, it would be a nightmare trying to paint that thing all together at once. So working in littler pieces is really nice. Once we have it all together and all sealed, then the next step we do is a wash. And I don't do this a ton, but in this case, because we're going for that battle worn effect, I wanted to add a wash and just kind of play with it. So what we're doing here is we're taking brown paint once again, and we're going to water it down a ton. And basically we're just going to be painting a thick layer of this watered down brown into like all of the nooks and crannies and stuff. So we do a thick layer and then we wipe it off. What this does is it keeps the brown in those little corners and like the dark spots and stuff like that, and it just gives some extra depth. It doesn't do a ton, but you can definitely tell the difference at the end. And once it dries, it looks fantastic, and I love doing this. And that there is our last step, and here is what we are left with. our Modern Warfare 2019 Gold MP5. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a super fun one. The MP5 is iconic for me. I love it. And if you enjoyed it, please hit that sub button, like the video, and comment below what you think I should paint next.